Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our session. You want to know, so ask. Best practices for an eText initiative on your campus. My name is Noma Maier. I am an IU eText consultant for Indiana University, and I serve alongside Vicki Maloy as the co-chair for the eText community of practice. Vicki, thank you. Before our panelists introduce themselves and their institution, I'd like to provide you with just a little background information. Each of the six Unison institutions represented on today's panel have eText initiatives on their campus, obviously. But while each of our initiatives started at different times and are varied in their size and their scope and their implementation, the common goal we all are striving for is promoting student success. Last fall, we formed a community of practice specific to our roles as administrators of the eText initiatives so that we could all learn from each other and provide cohesive feedback to Unison. So these six folks that you're going to hear from today all carry out the day-to-day operations of their initiatives, and they are here to share their expertise with you. It goes without saying that Unison is a wonderful partner to all of our initiatives. We could not simply do the work we do without the tools and support they provide to us. And with that said, let's have our panel introduce themselves, starting with Kurt.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kurt Kaiser. I am the Assistant Director of the Bookstore at Colorado State University. I've been here for 12 years, but in our industry for over 30. But we started our entire inclusive access program back in 2016. And at this point in time, for a spring semester, you can see our numbers. We've got 700 plus sections using different digital materials, including Unison. We are a little different in the fact that everything comes through the bookstore here at Colorado State. So we are an independent store, so we're part of Colorado State University, not a lease operator. So, but you can see we've got 600 plus faculty using all of the different materials we have, 17,000 plus students, and 54% of the students on campus are incorporated into some of these different types of materials. And so far, we've been able to save our students over $17 million compared to the digital list price.
And Mark is up next.
Hello, I'm Mark Goodner. I am the Principal Business Analyst and Faculty Consultant for the IU eTexts initiative at Indiana University. Our initiative is run through University Information Technology Services through a subunit called Learning Technologies. We're focused on, obviously, lots of digital content with us. We've been around a lot longer than our other Unison colleagues because we created some things on our own long before the idea of Unison came to be. So that's why our numbers look a little bit different from everybody else. We still count all of our previous efforts. We are nearing a milestone, as you can see from our cumulative savings from retail price. We're just about to hit an amazingly huge, astounding number. And that's 11 years worth. Well, it's going to be 12 years worth of effort by the time we get it all said and done. And just as a reminder, all of our contact information we'll share with you at the end of the session. So if we don't have time for everyone's questions, we'll get back to you very soon. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Mike Shiflet from Ohio State University. Sorry, I'm getting a little feedback. We've been running Unison full-time since 2019. We did a few small pilots before that. As you can see here, Noma mentioned all our programs are run slightly differently. We all have slightly different stats. So I think both Kurt and Mark mentioned, their slides mentioned unique students, and I can get that information, but didn't quite have time to before this session. But one thing I wanted to include was our opt-out number, because it's something we get asked about all the time, and something if you're thinking about starting a program like this, you might get asked about all the time. And what I always say is I spend more time talking about opt-outs than I do opting students out. And so really happy with what we've done in a few short years at Ohio State, and just glad to be here.
Hello, my name is Vicki Maloy. I'm here from the University of Iowa. Our eText program began with our involvement with Unison. So we don't have legacy numbers to add to us, but we're doing pretty good. Our program comes through the Office of Teaching, Learning, and Technology, which is a sub-branch out of our university's ITS group. So that's similar to Indiana. Just like everyone here, we really focus on the fact that it's student success that's driving our desire and our efforts to keep this program going.
I'm Brad Severa from the University of Nebraska, and in 2019 we started a program that actually had 3 parts, and Unison was one part of that. We had OER program that got started with some funding for faculty that started it. And then we also had a bookstore on campus, and it was a Follett bookstore, and they began their inclusive access program at the same time. So since everyone was using that, that has the bulk of our savings, but Unison's still a big part of it. So even though we don't have a lot of faculty, we only have 15 or so this semester. Overall, we've reached about $1 million saved for students on Unison alone, and that's part of a $6 million savings so far. So they're doing a big chunk of it, which has really been great so far.
Hi, I am Rhianna Campbell from UW-Madison. I am the Engage eText program manager. The program on our campus started in 2018 as a pilot, and it was moved to a full-fledged program just last year in 2021. For our spring 2022 stats, we have 91 courses participating with 105 unique instructors, over 14,000 unique students, which is about 30% of our enrollment. And the estimated savings since 2018 is just over 6 million.
Okay, so, oops. So now you have a bit of background from all of our schools that are participating in the panel today, and we are ready for your questions. So you can put those in the chat at any point, and we will answer them live. I would assume too that people can just open their mic and ask their question. But that's probably easier if you don't want to type it. That'd be great.
Hi, this is Chris Larson with the University of Minnesota Bookstores. I was just wondering, are any of you running your inclusive access programs through multiple platforms, or using Unison plus anything else?
Yeah, Nebraska, we're doing it through our bookstore, and they have a program called Access, and then of course through Unison. So since our bookstores have been there for, well, as long as I have, over 20 years, that's what most faculty are using and comfortable with and know about. So the bulk of our Engage, our inclusive access, is going through them. It's just hard to compete with such an established, presence on campus. So they get the bulk of it, but there were quite a few. We've had up to about 30 faculty using the Unison product. So some have tried it. It is a little cheaper because Unison doesn't take a cut out of it, or add on, an extra percentage for their cut, because the bookstore does that.
I think one thing that's worth noting as well is when it comes to the technology, Unison doesn't add an extra layer of interface between students and publisher homework systems. So all of those, we're essentially, all of us, using multiple platforms. Flat digital texts are delivered through Unison, but we still connect directly to McGraw-Hill Connect, Engage MindTap, et cetera, et cetera. through Unison. Unison is involved. Unison and myself are involved in the billing process for that, but technologically, we just step aside once the instructors are enrolled and faculty start working directly with their publisher reps to make sure the configurations are put in place to bypass paywalls.
Here at Colorado State, Unison's actually coming through the bookstore. So, but what we've decided is it's going to be the easiest for our students to have one platform to opt out. And so it depends on if you're talking about the opt-out procedure or if you're talking about getting to the materials themselves. So everything's going through Canvas, and it's got its own place on Canvas, which is what we've got here at Colorado State. But for students, the LTI, the integration is all going through us. So the students don't necessarily know or care if they're using our program or Unison's opt-out program. It's all coming through us. That does put a little bit more work on my shoulders to manage everything, because I've got to get it into the Unison platform adoption tool, because we have everything else coming through what we do here at the bookstore, if that makes sense.
So we do have a question in the chat. Are there any concerns or feedback from faculty when you started this project on your campus?
I'll jump in on that one. The challenge that we still have today is a lot of faculty have a mindset of what things were like when they were students, maybe is the way to think about it. And they're stuck on the idea that you must have a physical book, or you must have it on your bookshelf, and you must carry it with you from office to office. There's also a lack of understanding of what the reality is of what students actually want, as far as not necessarily their preferences for their personal reading, but what they want when it comes to academic requirements and what they're willing to pay. And so the challenge is getting faculty to understand that the world is different from when they were students and how they were treated. So it's not horribly hard to overcome, but that's definitely in the way.
I'd add on that our faculty can't sometimes wrap the idea around that students don't want to keep their books forever, because they can still point to their bookshelves and say, this was my book from when I was a student. And with electronic resources, there is a finite access time. Now, with eTexts through the Engage platform, that access time is actually longer than you'd have for a regular publisher platform. So that's a nice bonus. But when I've got some instructors who say they need their texts so their students can complete board exams after they graduate, then I say, well, thank you for considering us, but clearly we aren't a great fit for you.
Some of the excuse me, positive feedback I've had about it is beyond the cost being better is the first day access. That's been very important to some of our faculty. It's that every student has it on the first day of class, because they have it before they opt out if they don't want it. So that's been one of the things that's been really important to a few of the faculty I dealt with.
The issue that, and I would call it a non-issue, but the thing that pops up regularly here is that faculty can't kind of wrap their head around the contracts and negotiation sides of what texts are available and not. So, there's no way to get around faculty being disappointed when their textbook that's from a really small academic press isn't available through our program. And, that just is what it is. Like it's unlikely that publisher can negotiate at scale like Unison wants to. And fortunately, that represents a small number of faculty, but it seems to pop up about every term. Someone or another has a book that we just can't get.
And I want to go back to something that Michael said earlier, and that was about courseware. One of the things that I always drum on faculty about is when I'm talking to them, if they order a courseware product and they order it through a publisher platform, the kindest thing they can do is start to order that through us, through the Unison initiative, because they're getting the exact same product, but they are getting it at a price that's much better than they can get anywhere else. Same thing, just a cheaper price. So why wouldn't you do that? We say that all the time to our faculty. Okay, so we do have another question here in the chat. This person asked, they're curious if your eText initiatives or eTextbook initiatives are opt-out for students, or if any of you are using an opt-in model, and if you have received any student feedback about the opt-out model.
I can jump on this one. We actually offer both depending on the materials. The program that we use to manage all of it actually does allow us to do opt-in and opt-out. 99% of the materials on campus are opt-out. And so the opt-in ratio is very small. The opt-in ratio is very small, but the number of students that opt out of that are significant. So it's more like an optional book, if that makes sense, whenever we do opt-ins. The feedback that I've gotten from students, and I'm actually the main contact from financial services, they come to me and okay, well, here's Kurt at the bookstore. He can explain what these are, because a lot of students don't read their emails and they don't recognize that, well, I wasn't in the store, I didn't buy that. So once we explain what it is, they completely understand and they remember using the materials. But we do get the question, why don't you do an opt-in? And the easy answer for us is the Board of Governors decided for us to do an opt-out program. I know other schools have got the opt-in program. And once again, the opt-out ratios are fairly high with those. But once we explain what the program is and what the students are getting out of it, if there's any questions about having opt-out versus opt-in, those questions go away, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I would say, to that, the more you lean towards opt-in, you're not going to be able to secure the pricing that Unison has for us. I mean, the opt-out model is why we have the pricing. If we can't ensure a certain number of students, they're not going to provide us with the discounted pricing that we get. To your question about feedback, we've definitely refined our sort of what I would call pre-opt-out messaging. We've over the years refined our email notifications. We just updated it again for the summer and autumn terms that are upcoming, so that now our initial messaging was just kind of, hi, you've enrolled in a class, click here to find out what that might be. Now we've worked with the registrar to use some live fields in the email that can pull like exactly which course they registered. And also we changed it so that this was never something we wanted, but from the registrar, students were only getting the email once a term. It was just kind of like, you're now enrolled in this program. And now anytime they enroll in any class, they get the email, and the email has a full list of all the classes. So, they might get an email today if they sign up for a class, and it'll show they're enrolled in 3 upcoming Carmen Books course. Carmen Books is what we call our program. And if they sign up for another course that uses a book next week, they'll get the email pinged again with a 4th course added, and the list will just keep growing. And the more information, the better, because along with those small number of opt-outs that we have, the very few that we do have, I would say we have about another 10% of the opt-outs we receive end up canceling their opt-outs, because, as Noma said, with these courseware solutions, particularly, you can't get a better deal, and there's literally no difference between them. So students, are quick to opt out when they get this email notification. Oh, a fee, I don't want this, no thank you. Then they realize they can't actively participate in the class without paying significantly more money directly to the publisher, and come back to us and cancel that request. So the more messaging up front, the more you can do in advance, the better things are going to be.
Yeah, we just recently updated, like you said, Mike said, and before I'd get a few emails, even then that wasn't very many, but a few people went like, well, I never got that message, whatever. And once we updated it and the messaging was way better, I'm not sure I even got any this last semester. So it works, and the opt-in rate is very high. I mean, it's upper 90%. So the students seem really happy about it.
Yeah, I'll jump on that bandwagon saying we also have updated some of our messaging. We have found we do have an opt-out. That's the way that we do it on the UW-Madison campus. And I have found that some, again, students don't always read their email, or sometimes it just gets lost in the amount of other emails that they get. And we did have some questions from students, typically after we stopped allowing them to be able to opt out. But the biggest issue that I've noticed in relation to that is oftentimes instructors won't put a lot of information in the course or in their syllabus that kind of explains how they're using the eText, what the eText is, and how those fees are assessed, despite some gentle email reminders from myself to them to include some of those things. So the majority of questions I get surrounding opt-outs are more related to the information that the instructor has or has not provided.
I'll just chime in to say also we are running opt-outs here at Iowa, and that just like Rhianna, the instructor participation makes a big difference. If they take, and we put suggested syllabus language on the websites, and we email the suggested syllabus language to the instructors. We ask, if you don't mind, an announcement prior to the opt-out deadline would really help with the communication with your students. So we're doing what we can with our automated emails, but also we're messaging to the instructors as well, saying you've selected this for your students. This is going to impact their pocketbooks. Please do your part with the communication.
I use an opt-out also, similar situation to most of the rest. We have slightly different kind of procedures than everybody else. We don't do targeted outreach directly to students, but we provide lots of information that's out there that's student available. We send generic email messages with basic information about the whole concept of everything they're a part of, and expect them to act on that. But we don't have very many opt-outs. We don't get very much feedback except for the student who's missed the deadline and is mad at themselves and wants to take it out on me. But we also do focus a bit more, like the others have said, on faculty education. Some of our best faculty are people who say things like, well, how much would you want to pay for this? This is the best option we've got right now, among all the other things. The price is an awesome thing, but all the other features going around it, like the first day access. And that's part of the reason our numbers are so low.
I think one of the things Mark mentioned there that I would like to hammer home is, even though it sounds like we all do this similarly, there actually are some key differences in how we all operate. And if you leave with like one point, I would hope it would be that there's no right way to do this. I believe, Indiana, your deadline is still before the semester begins, correct? Like, yeah. And ours is the second Friday of any session, no matter what that is. We moved to that because some of our sessions start on Monday, some on Wednesday. So there was just kind of like we don't want to use a set number of days and make that weird. So we just said second Friday of any session. That was another change that came after a few rounds of using the 100% refund date, which is what the registrar defaulted to. But what we found is for some of these sessions that start on a Wednesday, the 100% refund date is the Friday, 2 days later. And that, wasn't enough time in our opinion. So students have anywhere from 7 to 10 days on our end after classes begin. So they can even get in, look at the book, look at the reader, see if it works for them. Maybe they decide they want a print book or something and then choose to opt out. But I think we all have different deadlines and different processes. And, and not just in opt-outs, but around the board. And yeah, that'd be what I would hope people would take away is like, we're all happy to tell you what we do, but none of us are doing it the right way. There is no right way.
I would say if you're thinking of doing it, first thing to do is talk to your registrar, your student accounts, faculty senate, student government. Go out there and make a bunch of friends first, because they're all going to be very helpful when you start implementing this thing. There's so many people I know across campus now I didn't know before this, and you can't do it without them. So that's very important.
I actually had a follow-up question on that. Because I think I'm from the University of Michigan, and we're just sort of starting to explore some of this space. And so some of our questions are around who are the folks on campus that were champions for you, that helped the project move forward? And then what were some of the challenges that you would love to tell us about so that we would avoid them as you were rolling out your projects on campus?
But at Indiana, we were lucky that the whole concept was started by the vice president of information technology. It was his baby. So that made everything very easy for us to get people in line, on board, participating, maybe reluctantly, but they did, because he was also a very forceful personality. But now that it's established, it doesn't take much to keep people motivated and interested, because they see what the outcomes are. So there's that. And I think what the biggest lesson we learned is that, unfortunately, at the beginning, all the different pieces of this initiative were handled by these individuals in all the different parts of the IT office, plus this one guy over in the registrar's office and this one woman over here. And the communication wasn't necessarily as strong as it could be. And that's why, so people like us exist. I think it's because the people on our campuses realize there needs to be a person or a single office who's got oversight over all the different pieces. And there's a lot of moving parts to initiatives like this. And it helps to have one person being able to see everything and communicate across everybody. Not everybody fully understood the other person's role and what they played. And so weird things happen, sad things happen. So definitely find a single champion to sort of oversee things is my recommendation.
I'll just carry that thread forward. That champion does not need to know how to connect to the Unison database. I couldn't have set up my programming. I have some gifted programmers here at Iowa, thank goodness. And so they were able to do the technical parts, and they said very quite blank, you can keep the people parts. You go ahead and keep the people parts. We'll keep the computers. So make friends with your IT department. Your registrar will help, especially when it comes to HEOA reporting, the higher education opportunity. I lost the thread, but there's requirements, there are federal requirements to reporting that the registrar knows down cold that they will help you with the textbook reporting as well.
And Brad mentioned a minute ago the students, and so student government is big here. I work for the Affordable Learning Exchange at Ohio State, which is actually a cross-campus partnership, and USG, our student government, is part of that. The changes I mentioned a minute ago to our email came from some feedback from them. I mean, students will always push for kind of pie in the sky best case scenario, and that's, I think everyone here would agree, part of our job is a balancing act. So we listen and nod our head, and then when the meeting's over, go, there's no way that's going to happen, but okay. Like I think they would, they probably asked for something like an infinite opt-out period or something, I don't know, but the changes to the email made sense when they mentioned that, like, the email was pretty vague and generic, and we were like, you know what, you're right. They also just are good at advocating to faculty. This term, after running it for a few years, I got my first email from a faculty member, actually a department chair, who said, this faculty member has a bunch of students complaining because he assigned them Pearson MyLab and it's not through your program and they have to pay full price. And I was like, well, I feel bad for those kids, but also I'm glad that we've reached the saturation point that now everyone knows. And like the students are actively like, why didn't you do this on our behalf? So, you know, students are looking out for their best interests, and this ultimately is in their best interests. So they're great to have on your side.
Yeah, I work for ITS. That's my main job, and it's academic technology. So I work with a lot of faculty, and I know those programmers like Vicky was talking about. So that's very helpful to know that team. But in the work I did before this, I know a lot of faculty who are kind of the progressive faculty and are always volunteering for helping us, you know, pilot things like Canvas when we switched to Canvas. So when we started this and we needed people to maybe try some of this out, I already had a list of faculty to go to say, hey, we're thinking of doing this. So they were very helpful with that too, because they're like, yeah, sure. What do you want me to do? You know, and it's great to have people to help pilot these things, because they're fine with some bumps and things along the road when you're trying new stuff out. So find those faculty on your campus and make friends with them. That's important. And like Mike was just saying, I had a faculty contact me, a new faculty who was teaching a class that had been using inclusive access, and he didn't know about it when he took over. And he's like, calls me, he says, yeah, what's this inclusive access? My students were talking about it. I didn't know anything about it. They're all upset with me, you know. So get your students involved in it too, in whatever form you can, because they're big advocates, of course, too.
The one thing, and adding on to what Brad just said, if you're just getting started, I was lucky enough that in the independent bookstores, University of California, Davis is, they're the ones that are really leading the way in a lot of different things that we do. So my boss actually flew me out and I met with them for a few days, figured out what they're doing with their program, came back, and we've actually gotten bigger than what they're doing there, but they're still one of the leaders. But the first thing I did is I found an instructor who is using courseware, because you know that to me, courseware is going to be a little different than a straight ebook. Courseware, you know that the students are going to be using it. There's not going to be anybody opt out whenever you show that you can provide it easier and less expensive. So if you can find an instructor who's using courseware, that would be the first step. And then get in touch with your campus IT folks to be able to integrate that in. Then all of a sudden it becomes easy. You're just running it all through Unison, and you're tracking everything that way. So just find a very good instructor and go to there.
I'd like to add again, also circle back to the Unison issues. Like, don't underestimate how helpful Unison can be in this. They take away so much of the little nitty gritty details of stuff by offering the order tool and the opt-out tool and the Engage e-reader. They do so much for us that frees us up to focus on many, many other things to make our programs even stronger, because we don't have to deal with these little daily tasks.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was hired into this role about 2 years after the pilot had launched. So I didn't get the experience of standing this up myself, but I do know that we had a specific initiative called the Educational Innovation, and that is kind of the building block for how this started. And I work for the Division of Information Technology in the Academic Technology Department, and we kind of helped, like the group that I work for helped kind of spearhead that movement in addition to the Associated Students of Madison. So they were another big proponent and champion of this while it was getting started. At the moment, the two, I think, kind of biggest proponents for this on the campus at UW-Madison are the CIO and Vice Provost of IT at DoIT, as well as the Vice Provost of Teaching and Learning. So it's good in addition. I mean, you definitely do need to kind of work with, or you do need to work with the registrar's office, the bursar's office, Having that student voice is important, knowing the instructors that can assist in piloting, but if it's possible to also have that support of someone that is higher up in a position like a teaching and learning, that's also really helpful.
I just wanted to ping on, I was gonna mention him and then Rhianna said it at the very last second there. The registrar and bursar, we didn't talk about it much, but find out what your institution's policies, especially around student billing and fees, are in advance, because that's kind of determined some of the ways we work. And one of the ways in which Ohio State is different, we don't have some of the flexibility that some of the other schools here do. So our fees have to be in place before students start enrolling for a term. So we run one of the earliest order periods months in advance. We're already done ordering for autumn. Our deadline was last month because enrollment for autumn opened March 21st, I believe, something like that. So, figure out what your policies are so you aren't over promising and under delivering, and know what kind of terrain you have to work in.
And I want to throw out something that hasn't been said yet, and that is, it is very important for you to understand what your bookstore contract looks like and allows and does not allow before you go into planning your eText program. And we do have another question in the chat here that I'm going to throw out to you all now. We do have about 8 minutes left in this session, so if you have a burning question, put it in the chat or open your mic and let us know. So this question says, this may pertain only to those of you who are working with bookstores, but are you providing discounted loose leaf editions of inclusive access titles for those students who want print? And if so, are there any hurdles? Do they sell?
I can definitely take care of this one. Normally, we have what we call the print upgrades. The students will have the courseware and the ebook whenever it comes to through Canvas. But students know best how they learn. So if they choose to have a print book, we will call them print upgrades. We work with the publishers. The pricing is usually between $20 and $40. So it's much less than a traditional loose leaf. Whenever we adopt it into our system, we have a recommended code of stop, go to class. Don't buy it, go to class, get started with the ebook. If you find you want the print book, come back to the store later and we'll have them available for you. I would say that we sell maybe up to 5% of the entire actual enrollment for the classes for these. There are a few instructors that negotiated with the publisher that the students get the courseware and the ebook, but they also get a print upgrade for free included in the cost. That means that the first week of class, I actually deliver these print books over to the classes and we hand them all out, but it's a very rare situation. So they kind of sell, like I said, less than 5% of the actual enrollment will come in and buy the print upgrade if they do want it.
Yeah, since we have Follett, if a faculty wants a print version, they'll just order through Follett. And Unison does have an option where you can print so many pages out a day. So if the students want to print it themselves, they can do that. Unison has told me that rarely happens. So like Kurt said, once they start doing the ebook online, they tend not to bother with it too much.
Okay, so on that note, I would say for Indiana, we have like 3 requests for a printed title each year. And we've just decided to actually stop offering that altogether because it's a lot of work for the 58,000 students who don't ask for that, for the 3 that do. They also have a print allotment that they receive as part of their technology fee. And if they really want to print, they can print using that. Okay, we do have Kurt has been so kind as to put a note in the chat. Thank you, Kurt. The question was, what individuals or departments on your campuses were responsible for initiating e-textbook initiative conversations? And Kurt,
Oh,
popped
sorry.
in there. Campus IT, financial services, registrar, and faculty is where he would start. Anybody else want to add something to that?
I was just going to say I think this one's a tricky one for everyone here because we're all kind of Unison founding member institutions. So it was done at a very high level, at least from Ohio State. And I think this is across the board at a very high level. This almost came down less, and was less of an organic foundational thing because, hey, we're members of Unison. Unison offers this. Can we roll it out here? It was kind of how it started here. And I'm imagining it's probably pretty similar across the board.
UNL was kind of unique in that. I mean, we were founding members of Unison too, so that was how we got into the Engage tool. But we were looking into OER first, and we were doing things with that before the Unison tool came out. So we were starting with, again, the faculty we knew, and we also were working with libraries and with our instructional design group just to identify people who might be wanting to do it. And then one of our campuses found out about a grant through our provost office at our central. So we applied for that and got that around 2017. We're starting to do that. And then Unison came along around 2019, our bookstore, we were already doing the OER grant. Our bookstore started their program. Then our executive vice chancellor had been a teacher, of course, and one of her former students told her about this book was so expensive. So she sent this email out to all faculty saying you should find cheaper books. So things just sort of happened all at once for us, which was really cool. So it was sort of just some dumb luck got thrown in there too. So you never know. Sometimes you get happy accidents happen and help you out. Academic affairs also is a good office to talk to and get some help from if you can.
We have just 3 minutes remaining. So last minute question. We do want to make time to be sure that we invite you to our community of practice, and Vicki has just popped that slide up on the screen for you. So you can contact either Vicki or I at Unison Teaching and Learning's email address that's there on the screen. We meet on the third Friday of the month at 11 o'clock Eastern time. Next meeting is May the 20th, and we would love to have you there if you'd like to learn more. And we also have each of our contact information on the next slide so that you can contact any of us directly. If one of us sounded like a fit with the situation that you might have at your institution, then you can reach out to one of us, or you can send a group message to all of us. We'd be happy to answer your questions. Thank you so much for joining us.